Easy Tigers, I hope everyone's fine and dandy. Welcome back. First things first, just want to big up the people that have supported me. I appreciate you guys, thanks a lot. And if you want to support me, I'll leave the links in the description. Right, this is a very special episode because we have a guest, but he's remained completely anonymous. You don't want me to put his voice or anything, nothing whatsoever. He's a expert in geopolymer. I think it's generational. His father was involved in it. He's done a heck of a lot of research on it. He's a very knowledgeable guy, but he just wants to remain anonymous. And the best way I could do this interview was just record it and then just play it with the pictures that he's shown. And hopefully that works. We're currently in the middle of doing some, he's given me a load of information, basically. Tons and tons of it, and it's literally going to connect all the dots. For me, it connected all the dots. So if you've been following this channel, then it's going to connect all the dots that we have been looking for. So let me know if you want to have another session of this after. It's the sort of thing you like. We're just going to get straight into it. So I'm just going to show you a series of pictures, and they're going to be what the guy has sent me, and it's going to be in matching what he's saying at the time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, all that jazz. So here we have an example of what acid etching can do on stone, and it's very minimal, and it might not look much, but it gives you a lovely smooth finished surface. And if you've got to make something detailed like that, or to fill in a chip or anything like that, it can help you do that. Where you've got small amount of work to be done and you need to effectively add a bit of stone glue, making up a batch of geopolymer weirdly does not work. I can explain why. Suffice to say, chemically it's that same thing as trying to get two bits of copper to stick to each other. You can't just get a fresh bit of copper and pour it onto a cold bit of copper, because once they're set, the liquid copper has different properties. It won't weld together properly. The way you actually weld two bits of copper is some lead solder and some flux, because the flux will etch into the copper surface, allowing the sulfur to bridge the copper. And it's similar with geopolymer. Once the material's set, you need a different substance to alter it in a way. They did develop these, and they're called stone softeners, but it's not going to turn it into plasticine. It's just surface, purely surface. You can almost see where it's been rubbed on, just over that joint, just above and below and on the side. It's only on that joint. So they had a lot of pride in their work. Look at that. Yeah, the distance between the two stones. Can you imagine that being done any other way? It's impossible. That can only be done with a wet mix, very closely fitting. This is where geopolymer is an art form in South America. They perfected it, absolutely perfected. So here, this image, you can see what I'm talking about. It's a South American one with the melty wall on it. It's a very interesting example. Below is the absolute ginormous geopolymer going on. It's absolutely bonkers, look at it. On top, but you can barely see the jointing in between the two because they're very clever how they did it, is geopolymer wall with the hole in it, and four nubs or nodules, if you like, to get around the form mould. So the form mould is where the window is. So you've got your four nodules to get an even flow around the form mould. So it's an inverse form mould. Like I said before about managing to get around the whole of the form. That's what's going on there. And the block below is ancient. So they're building on it with their best technology as a homage to say that we can't do this, but this is the best we can do. We still have your technology, but we don't know how you did it on this scale. But this is what we can do. It's still very impressive, but if you look, it's an artificial cave under there. And you can see a support beam in geopolymer. It's a slightly lighter colour because it hasn't weathered, but it's the same material. You can actually see where it's broken at one end slightly. Then there's a little wall, but I'll show you another picture in a minute anyway. So this gives you a slightly better image. You can see how fine that stonework is, that geopolymer work. And again, you can see nubbies. And again, where are they? They're on the corners, because again, you're going to need to deal with runoff. I just want to stop there because I'm obviously like, I've got the geezer in my ear and then I'm saying what he's saying because he doesn't want anything to get back to him whatsoever. So I just want to clear a few things up. These little knobs, I'm just going to show you a picture now. These knobs, or noob, he calls them noobs. There's a few reasons for them. One is for when they were actually pumping the sacks, because he says this is an art. Geopolymer is an absolute art, and in South America they mastered it. So when you see the noobs, they're normally on bigger blocks because it's a way to pump the mix in evenly, so you don't get no bubbles and everything's like just done evenly and pushed around evenly. And another thing is, sometimes they're there for water drip offs, so it doesn't affect underneath. So what's underneath them noobs don't get damaged. It makes complete sense. But I'll get back to that anyway, because I'm only mentioning that because you can see these little noobs or these little things poking out. And previously, a couple of days ago, that's what he told me they're for. So they're to basically stop rain dripping down the rest of the building, and also they were what they filled the sacks up with the concrete or the geopolymer mix. They've done a beautiful job of completely smooth blocks, but the blocks ain't actually enormous. They're not massive, but look how beautiful they're fitted on top. It almost merges with the rock completely. And if it hadn't been for the fact that the rock had shifted over time, it would be immaculate. So it's an impressive piece of work. Look how thick it is. A little window up there. You can see through the window how thick the wall is. It's absolutely crazy. You can see underneath the bottom nubs there that water has not dripped. So the water's flying off and dropping off. So it's not weathering underneath the noobs. So they're effectively redirecting the water. Anyway, next image. This is pretty image, this famous. Mostly because people can't explain why it's done. I think I probably can. If you had to do that by hand, good luck. But look, you can see it's squished. It's squished, you know? It's squished into place. It's so immaculately put in there. Can you imagine putting that three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle together? It would be impossibly difficult. To even do that in geopolymer is remarkable, but there it is. It's right in front of you. But you can see quite clearly. If you look at the bottom block, it's rectangle, and then the 4 blocks above it, but they're set in a cross shape. But if you zoom in, the top right block of them 4 is squashed into the bottom left, just at the corner. So you could squish the stone below so it could fit in nicely. Then you can see more evidence of the fact that this is a malleable material. I mean, look at the bulging of the pillaring. Clearly looks like someone's built a plasticine wall and slightly squished it in. It's very impressive. You can see to one side that it's another attempt. They have these characteristic rounded edges and tops and pillaring. It's all the signs of geopolymer. Next to this ancient. So now I'm going to show you something very crazy. I mean, if this doesn't get you, I don't know what will. I mean, look at that. Look at it. Zoom in, have a good look. Have a good look, Gander. What could we say about this? This looks like a concrete monolithic block. It has been moulded into the side of a mountain in one piece. The windows are inlaid using frame moulds. It is smooth, and the lichen growth is suggesting it's been there an incredibly long period of time, and it's just squished in there. And then look at the wall it joins onto. Where does that join with the rock below it exactly? Good luck. That is pretty impressive. You can't get any better than that. Even to do that in concrete would be remarkable. And by the way, there is another image of this, but it's further back, and you can see the whole mountain and the geopolymer block faces. Hundreds and hundreds of feet up in the air, perched up on a mountain. How did they get it up there? Well, it's easy. If you're only carrying in 1 bucket at a time, it's very easy. So you carry the dry ingredients up there, wait for it to rain, collect the rainwater, use it as a liquid. So you ain't got to carry the liquid, and you just carry the dry ingredients in buckets or whatever. But it's still a ridiculous achievement. Now, if that wasn't done that way, this entire single piece of stone would have to be carved and then slotted into the side of a mountain halfway up a vertical slope. And I wouldn't even know how to access this because it's vertical all the way around. Here you can see a very rare image where the wall was coming apart, and the dear stonemasons went to all the trouble to make it fit and finish as smooth as anything, even smoother than the outside of the stone. And why would they do that? Why would they care more about the inside joint than the stones next to it? Well, you could say because the outside surface is worn and pitted, and it was all once baby smooth like that. You can't carve that sort of precision, and it's got to fit next to one next to it perfectly. So if it's not done as a liquid, you tell me how the hell it's done, because I just don't see any other way, do you? This is what most people don't get. You hear it over and over again. You couldn't fit a bit of paper between these rocks, and they're not joking. The fit is just inhuman, and you can't do it any other way. If it flows into that space with a full mould to one side, you don't need a full mould where it's joining. You only need a full mould on the sides where it's fitting up against the sides of the rock. You want it to flow into the gap. But what you might want is something in between. So you might want to cover the stone in some sort of animal fat so it doesn't stick. That might be one way. You could do it without a sack at all. Maybe you're trying to get around a box mould or something like that. You know, there's lots of different ideas, but in most cases I always think they take the most simplest path, and that's probably just so it don't stick to the rock next to it. And I don't think they use the same technique over and over again. I think they experimented a lot. Based on what I've seen of modern geopolymer, this is absolutely in line with that. All the signs and symbols are there if you know what you're looking at. But just look at the curve, it speaks for itself. It just slots directly, perfectly in there. And the fact that they're not actually glued together, you could take these apart and renovate the wall. You could take them apart and put it back together. And in fact, that's what the Spanish done. They dismantled the walls looking for gold, didn't find any, and put them all back together in a shabby way. Not as good as. This stone in Saxe-Weimar is the absolute typical pillowing, and it's bulging. It's in a sack. You put so much material in a sack that the cloth is stretched tight, and it's doing what it wants to do, which is pushing out of the centre. You can prevent that by putting braces inside the moulds, by going in and putting on the inside, sewing some cloth on the inside on one side and the other. But you can sew a sheet, but you might as well do 2 blocks. So they're just pushing that mix a little bit far, and they're getting a little bit of a bulge. But I think they wanted that intentionally to emphasise the curve of this wall. So they're using the bulge of the actual pillow or the sack to do that. And also, why do I say that? Look at the bottom of the stone that's curving, the second one up. Look how it's dumpy at the bottom, and the curve where it touches the stone underneath it. And then look at the top of it. It's not dumpy, it's straight. It's curvy at the bottom. It's because it's slumped down. So I think Brian Forrester covered this one. They clearly did have cutting technology, and it's clearly much more advanced than anything we've got. And at least in terms of there are limits of cutting stone. And to do this kind of cut like this would require electricity, diamonds, diamond dust, steel cutting blades, and that level of precision would probably require some sort of straight edge, at least to score or mark the stone, to guide the blade. It's very curious that the scoring or etching mark, I don't know what to say about it really. If I had to guess, it's to stop people slipping off, but I don't think it is that, because it goes right up to the edge. I think Brian Forrester's took a camera up there and got some really good footage of it, but I should imagine whatever did that was powered, quite frankly, and to cut a rock out like that would be very difficult. Now, why do I think this is cut? Well, if this is geopolymer, the only thing that I can think that would leave an impression like that would be metal. And if the metal is rusted out, which it might have done, but looking at it, you can see the lichen around the corners. So it's orange deposit, and it probably is rust. But otherwise, it looks to me like cuttings. But I could be wrong. It's very difficult without going to the site. This is what I'm trying to get across. This is what I'm trying to get. It's not always straightforward. There's a lot of stuff going on these sites. It's just fascinating. Looking at it more closely, I zoomed in and I can see it's actually iron ore deposits. So I'll take it back. So this is probably not a cut-in, I'll take it back. It could have been an iron lattice imprint in the geopolymer to hold it together, like a framework if you will, which has long since turned into iron oxide and clung to the side of the rock. Very interesting. This certainly qualifies as a geopolymer. I always thought this was cut into, but now I've examined it properly, it's to me it seems like a iron lattice that's gone in there. But if that was metal, what was the purpose? Some things are imprints, so this could be an imprint of something that was imprint of metal, that something's entirely rusted away. So this is Geopolymer, I think. This is the inside of the fortress, and this is like they're almost trying to teach different types of nubs that you can make. Here is where someone, probably an apprentice, screwed up and squished themselves into one of the noobs. But because I think this was a teaching area or demonstration area, that's probably fine that they did that. But I'll point it out. Yeah, there we go. So they're just teaching different types of nubs, yeah. You've got bottom one there, which is a runoff one. The top one is showing joining two blocks together, and that's probably done using a sewing technique with material. But it could be two. It could just be two forms joined together. It might be possible. But I think it's all cast in one part, that top one. So if you put that on its back and pour down from above, you'd get this shape. I don't think that very odd looking block was actually done in situ. Well, that might have been, I'm not sure. The shapes are only really dependent on the fabric, the building fabric, the textile. Yeah, so you have a nub, which might be a stepping block, which is coming out a big rectangular one. This is just showing off what's possible, I think, like demonstrating area. Like people learning how to do this. So the one that's got the two nubs on it, this is a demonstration of when you have water gets into the seam between the joints and eats away the block below. That's why the drip off has to work to take the water away, because if it doesn't, it's going to get in between the cracks. So the block above survives and the block below dies. So I said all that before I even saw this, and there's some evidence of it. There you go, that's what happens. It messes up, you don't want it. So it's best avoided. So they're trying to teach you. So this is all things that you can do and things that you shouldn't do, all put together. You're not meant to touch it before it's finished. A demonstration on how to do it and how not to do it, basically. So you can see here, in this case, it's possible that these nubs are for runoff rainwater. But when you've got a block that's so big, that needs to be... Say if you had a block above this and you had to form fit both the sides and the bottom and the top, and you already had a block atop, you would have to pump this block. You'd have to pump it into position, otherwise it wouldn't touch everything and you wouldn't get the perfect fit. So in this case though, they've built this wall in courses. I can tell you in fact, I can just tell by eye this was done in courses. This is a rain runoff. Why do I know that? Look at the bottom of the nub. You can see that it's flat, and at the top it slopes it downwards. So the rain flows downwards and drips off the end. It's not going to drip on the blocks below. It's going to drip past the blocks below. Why did they do that? Because this is on a corner, and the water will get into the joints and eat the blocks, and sooner or later be done for. So it's a rain runoff, that one, on this particular block. Just some examples of the extreme talent of these people, but you can see where you don't want the block parts lining up. Just like when we build walls, every block is unique, all you need to do is get a certain amount of polymer, build a form mould onto the front, on the front and sides, or front and back effectively, because the back would be against the cliff, so you wouldn't need that. So you just need the front mould. The right edge is already covered by the block that's already there. One side mould, one back mould, and then one left mould, one front mould, and then nothing on top because you haven't decided what's going on top and you're building up. That's it. Then you pour your material and you just keep pouring till it's full. That's why if you look at the horizontal lines, they are very uniform because gravity tends to level things, whereas the horizontal forms can be almost any shape at all. So it's actually good to make them a little bit off here and there because it increases the strength of the wall. So yeah, it's a beautiful example. Why did I include that? Look at the snakes. The snakes are moulded. They're moulded. They're not carved on there or nothing like that. They're not moulded blocks. And the snake is part of the mould. And for that one I had a piece of wood that they have carved. The inverse of the snake was carved inversely, so it filled up that portion of the mould positively, and it gives you a standing off snake. And this person was really well trained because just above the snake you have a runoff nub. So rain runoff nub to stop the rain going down and damaging the snake. So it's just to protect the block below. Look at the angles on this crazy monkey. Look at the stone in the middle, it's squished, getting squished by the weight. The other one's above it. You've got pillowing all over the place. Massive amounts of geopolymer in here. And look how it all curves in a joint and fits so smoothly. Like you can get anything else in there. This can only be done with textiles and a wet mixed geopolymer. This is the only way it can be done. And you and me, we can get some seamstress. The skill really is in the women here that sewed these textiles together. Enormously skilled seams people that used to sew stuff together. So if we can get someone skilled at sewing to help us make a 3D mould, we could demonstrate this with cement. You don't even need the geopolymer mix, you can just do it with cement. It would work well enough on a small scale to test this theory if you want to try it out. So on this one, you've got framing, the door frame, which is very beautifully done. And you're having to have quite a complex mould. This is where you need to actually flow the material in. So these are actually places where they actually would have been, liquid would have been inserted into the mould. And these are so rigid and straight and uncurved that I think it was done with very flat boards of some kind, or maybe even other stone, I don't know. But whatever made this form was very flat and very perfectly shaped. So the holes there are really just cut out parts of the form. And it could be textile in this case, but you'd need some very straight and flat material behind them textiles to give it that shape like this. It's very impressive. But I think the nubs in this case are entry points for the geopolymer, because look at the ones at the bottom. Yeah, there's no need for rain runoff at the bottom. Because of the size of it, because it's so large, you have to put the material in from the bottom up and fill it up. So I think that's how it's done in this case, with a lot of wooden support all around it to make it very nice and flat. Hell of a lot of work done, but it's obviously an important site. So this is a picture of the pyramids that I was talking about, and you can see nubs on the rocks. How strange. South America and Egypt, huh? Well, there it is. It's right there, you can see them on the pillowed blocks. And they're pillowed because they're done in a textile and they're done rough. And if you look to the left of the guy, you can see where they've smoothed them out. So you don't mind having mouldings on the outside. And these are pumped. Look at the angle the blocks were at. So they're the entry points. Remember, the liquid's going to rise. So the liquid's going to be at the top of the block, and all the sediment or the mixture will go to the bottom. So the reason that I'm pointing this out is if it's sealed and the liquid rises, it will face equal pressure all the way round, and that way it will always... So one hole could be used to put in the geopolymer and the other hole could be used to take away the excess liquid. Even knowing how it's done, it doesn't make it any less special. It's impressive. Look at the size of the blocks. It's stupendous. He stood on one there. It's bonkers. So there's another another angle from that site where the bottom part of the stone is ancient and the top part is very impressive and still very old. Perfect fit on top of it, look at it. There's a door on the other side. Very impressive. Because the door on the other side is so large, this is an inverse casting in this case. But you see, Geopolymer has a self-leveling ability. You always find the natural level. It'll give you a very good straight row of building lines. So if you look again, the horizontal lines are very straight, but the vertical lines are a little bit drunk. And the blocks down the front are ancient, and they are massive. Absolutely huge. One last one from Egypt, the Egypt pyramids, just to show you where the pillaring has been removed, because the bags are puffing up so much that they're actually giving these big gaps where the blocks are meant to fit perfectly next to each other. But this is why you strap balls to the outside of it, because it pushes the seals closer together. The pressure. The other way of doing this, just face the front of it, and then you've got square blocks. You can even see there's nubs at the bottom. I think because of the depth of that block is sufficient. Well, there you go. I'm sorry, like, that information is absolutely incredible, and if you're not on board now, then I don't know, I can't help you, because I've got an expert here talking about Geopolymer. He's reached out to me. He's scared that he can't say anything about it because I'm not allowed to say too much, like, and I respect this guy's privacy, so either or, he's not allowed to say anything about this, but he's reached out to me, okay, and I'm giving you the information. So this is undeniable proof, and I've never heard explanations like this ever. I've been researching this stuff pretty much all my whole life, but intensely for the last couple of years. Now I'm still talking to this guy, and I'm going to call him Mr. X, and Mr. X, and he's just going to fill my brain with knowledge, and I'm just going to make a few videos, literally translating what he's saying. So let me know what you think about this. Let me know about what you think about the Geopolymer moulds, the frames, and how they pumped it in and all stuff like that. And I'll guarantee you half the people, more than half, haven't even heard of this stuff that I said. So that's the reason why you need to subscribe to this channel, because we're uncovering stuff that people don't go near. People are scared to go near, or people are just so biased that they got their head up their backside and just want to stick to a narrative that they want to pollute the internet with. Whereas here, I'm not biased, I'm just looking for the truth. I don't care how it comes or what it is, I just want to know what the truth is. So that's where I'm going. And another thing is, I'm trying to manifest 100,000 subscribers by Christmas. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please help me out. Help me out, because when I get to 100,000 subscribers, mathematically I should be able to live off YouTube, and then I should be able to just go live and go around these sites. So the quicker I get there, the quicker I can give you the best content that will be on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share. If you like this, share it out, obviously. And if you want to support me, all my links are in the description and embedded on my YouTube page. So one love, guys. Ta-da, and big up Mr. X. Ta-da.